the main objective of these workshops is tackling the larger mental model, the larger system, and not focusing on the how as much as focusing on the whys. Like, why do we need to develop our sales skills? Why do we need to develop our people skills? Why do we need to develop our product development skills? How all of these kind of things fit in one large system, right? So that's why it's seeing the system. Make sense? So I promise you today to go into more of looking at the details of the startup from inside. So this is the life cycle for a company or a startup over time. But let's get into the details of a startup. How are the dynamics and the interaction side the startup looks like? So our approach for this is, as we said, from a system perspective, looking at the whole thing, elements interacting together, and we spoke about what do we mean by a system and what are the kind of different types of system, and we said that a company is what kind of a system? It's a social system, right? And sometimes people say that it's a socio-technical system because you have the interaction with information systems, CRM systems, and some sort of an AI systems involved now in running our organizations. So what we are doing today is showing you a system dynamics model of a startup. This model I have been working on the last 2 years, and it's by any means not complete and not verified yet, but we can generate like simulations out of this model, but the whole idea is just to show you in one snapshot most of the elements and the interaction, the dynamics inside the startup, 80% of them, right? So I will start off by giving you a brief intro about system dynamics so that you understand the terminologies and the symbols, and then we'll go into the details, right? The reason, one of the key strengths of this model is actually it combines different perspectives for looking at startups, right? So I was overhearing discussion here before the session speaking about like the customer development ideas of Steve Blank in Stanford. So Steve Blank has a very famous book called The 4 Steps to Epiphany, and it's mainly speaking about customer development, how you can create customers and how you can reach out to customers and how you can validate customers and so forth. He's doing an amazing job on this, right? So most of this work is focused on having an MVP, going to the customer, test what you have, go back and iterate and refine on the product, and then go again, try to find other segments of customers and so forth until you recognize your real customers and you start the sales process, right? So this is one perspective. It's a customer perspective. It's looking at customers, right? Another perspective would be, which is a very famous perspective, the financial one, right? So if you ask someone what are the stages that a startup go through, they will say, okay, so in the beginning you need to bootstrap or family, friends, and fools. So you raise some funding from your family and friends and some fools, and you have like the initial money that you can work with, and then you go for seed funding, and then you might seek angel investment or some grants, and then you might go for VC and so forth. And later on you might go for IPO, so public offering, right? So this is a kind of a financial perspective to things, right? Other people might speak about product development. So what are the steps of product development? So probably people with a technical background, they will be very much focused on the whole ideation stage, the designing stage, and you have all sorts of like design thinking methodologies, the IDEO and the continuum ideas about developing products, right? So this is a very product-oriented perspective for startups. Another perspective would be organizational systems, right? The kind of reporting systems you need to have, the kind of communication systems, decision-making systems, knowledge management inside the organization, because over time you are accumulating experience, right, and knowledge, and this will be a huge asset for you later on. So a kind of an organizational system perspective for things. Another perspective is management style. And this is very much related to what we discussed yesterday, like how the management style need to be changed according to the state that the startup is in. So if you're having a very quick autocratic management style in the beginning, you cannot sustain this later on, right? So these are all different perspectives. And the problem that I have seen and I have experienced is that for what's the quote, for those who have only hammer, all problems are nails, right? Is this the right quote? So if you only know about customers, everything for you will be only related to sales and developing customers and so forth. So I think that we need all of these perspectives in order to have successful companies. And it's hard. It's not easy to integrate all of these perspectives in one thinking process, right? So this was one of the key reasons for developing such a system dynamics model. And we will see together the different perspectives shown in the model. So very simple terminologies. So in system dynamics, we have something called stocks. And stocks are represented as boxes. And these boxes are the things that accumulate inside the system over time. So we will have main 4 stocks. Human resources, so the people. So those accumulate inside your company over time. Number of customers, they accumulate. The product features or the sophistication of your product. So you add features or you remove features. So how many features your product have, it's a measure of the sophistication of your product, right? And the last one is cash. These hopefully things that accumulate inside the company, right? So those are the main stocks. These are the things that accumulate inside the system. The next one is the flows. So every stock has an inflow and outflow, right? So if you look for the human resources, for example, what would be the inflow? What would be the inflow? Recruitment, right? So the more I recruit, the more people I have. And what would be the outflow? Yeah, so the turnover, people resigning or laying off people and so forth, right? So these are flows. The last one is, this is actually not the last one. So the third one is causal loops and polarity. So causal loops is, these are the stocks, yet you have loops of things that are connected. So these are kind of the connections between the different stocks. How these stocks change, it's related to the different loops that's connected between these stocks, right? And then for the loops, we have 2 types of loops based on what this kind of connection do, right? So if we have this like stand and we have a hinge here and we have this stick, right? If I push here, this will be rotating infinitely somehow if there is no resistance, right? Because it's reinforcing itself, right? So it's reinforcing. So this is more of a reinforcement movement. But let's assume that somehow I prevent this from rotating by any mechanism here, and then I added some sort of a spring here, right? And then I push. What will happen? So it will go a little bit up, and then it will go back, and it might oscillate a little bit until it's stabilized. So what the spring did is actually what? Balancing, right? It's balancing because it's returning it back. Think about it this way. Again, looking at human resources. So if I am compensating my people, this should increase their what? Productivity, right? Theoretically speaking, right? right or wrong?
Yes.
Right? So if I'm compensating my people, this should increase their productivity, right? And if it goes like this, and the more productivity they have, the more good products and more cash, so I can pay them more and so forth, right? So it's a reinforcing loop, right? It's a positive one, right? But let's assume that the more productivity they have, the less energy they have, because they get what? Exhausted and burned out, right? So they cannot be productive infinitely. There is a limit to their productivity, right? So while I'm seeing this reinforcing loop of giving more money and getting more productivity, giving more money and more productivity, on the same time there is another loop playing out that the more productive they are, the less energy they will have. Make sense? So eventually at a certain point, it wouldn't matter that I'm giving them more money or not, because they will be exhausted. They need to stop, right? So that's why we call them balancing loops. Make sense? Complex? Complex, huh?
Wait, balancing, so it's balancing between what? I mean, you can squeeze them harder and then you squeeze them and then get just a very little bit of extra productivity for really squeezing them.
Yeah.
And then everybody starts hating the company, but many companies do that. So I don't quite see what's the balance there.
So most of the people who get exposed to system dynamics, they have problem with balancing. So what you are going through is very normal. But let's try to simplify it. Let's say that the negative loops is loops that act in reverse. Like the more I do of this thing, the less I will have. Okay? We will see. We will see in action how does this look like. And the last one is delays. Okay? So this is one of the very interesting concepts in system dynamics that many people, they do not fully acknowledge delays in the kind of systems we live in. So certain things, they take time to happen. Like for example, in startups, fundraising is a very time-consuming process. So the rule of thumb in fundraising and startups that you need to raise funds before you need it, right? So you need to forecast when you will need the money, and you start the fundraising before you need it, because if you wait until you need it, probably it will be too late. Okay, so appreciating delays in systems. And delays are usually stocks. They are represented by stocks in system dynamics, because it's somehow, it's like the bathtub. So let's say that in order to raise funding, you need to build a certain level of credibility. Once you reach to this level, you will get the 500K that you are looking for, right? But in order to reach to this level, it takes time, right? And once you reach to this level, yes, you might have the money you're looking for. So somehow it's represented by stocks. So delays. And this is also another example is like the gas for your car. You shouldn't wait until you run out of gas and then you try to find the gas station, right? You always want to make sure that you have a buffer so that you can actually get the gas before you run out of gas, right? So this kind of proactivity before you run out of things and planning ahead. So these are the main stocks, as I told you. If you don't see it, please come closer. So this is product features, the number of features you have in the product. This is the number of customers you have, the amount of cash, and this is the human resources. Is there anything that we can do with the focus? Yeah, it's small. Okay, let's see if the next one will be. Okay, so warning, the coming slide is a bit complex, so don't be intimidated by it. We will go through it, and hopefully it will be clearer. So this is the first section. So this is the first section. And let's read it from this part. This part say core team strengths. So this is the founding team. Okay? So the founding team, what contributes to the strengths of the core team? First one is the kind of connections they have, the kind of networks they are affiliated with, right? The kind of schools they studied in, the professional background, the kind of companies they worked in, the kind of charity groups they belong to, the kind of mentors they are affiliated with. All of this is connection. It contributes positively to the strengths of the core team. The next one is the experience. Okay? And this could be professional experience, could be entrepreneurial experience, could be non-profit experience. I would say it's a hands-on experience. The third one is the cohesion between the team members. The fourth one is diversity. And diversity is very much appreciated in teams. So like if you have all the team members from one discipline, you don't want to have this. You want to have the technical people, the business people, the maybe financial people. So you want to have this kind of mix, right? Even if you have like people from the same discipline, being from different schools, from different geographies, is part of the whole diversity, right? The last one is the complementary in the team. So you could be diverse, yet you are not complementing, right? So we could be diverse, but we still have gaps in the team. Like we are very diverse in terms of the technical perspective. So someone from a software background, someone is from energy background, someone is from biomedical engineering background, but we don't have anyone in business, for example. So yes, we are diverse, but we are not complementing what we are missing, right? So these are the factors that you need to consider when you are looking for the founding team, your team. These are important things that you need to have. Not only the experience, not only the education, but also is this team can work together? Can they stay long hours together, stay in the same office for a long time? Or eventually they might get bored of each other and they wouldn't like each other. So the commitment, the cohesion within the team is very important, right? So this is the core team strengths. And the core team strengths give rise to two causal loops, okay? The first one is job attractiveness. So once you have a strong core team, they can attract more people to the company, right? And we have seen this in many places. So for example, when my co-founder and I, we started working together and we started having some references in the market, we found people reaching out to us and say, we are very interested in what you are doing. We are interested in your ideas about startups and the whole platform you are building, and we want to join you, right? Let's sit and discuss. I mean, we are willing to join as interns, as part-timers, whatever, right? In the beginning, you basically don't have anything except you, right? You are the most important in the organization to attract people, to help you more and develop your ideas and your products or services. The second one is employee productivity, because basically in the beginning you are the engine of everything, right? If you have any defects in this, the team will not be productive, right? So two important things. And job attractiveness will help you to attract competent people, interested, passionate people, and they will contribute more to your productivity, right? So this is how this loop works together. There is lots of details. I don't want you to focus on the gray loops. This is kind of like taking you into more details. I'm happy to go into details after we finish with anyone who is interested. But let's focus together with the blue loops, because these are the core loops, let's say. Okay? And part of the job attractiveness, if you look at the job attractiveness, the two loops that's feeding into the job attractiveness is the core team strengths and the financial compensation, right? Because yes, if you are interesting and you have nice ideas, yeah, people might join you, but eventually after some time they need financial compensation to sustain their lives. And this is fact of life. You want to plan for this because people will not be able to work for free forever, right? Eventually at a certain point you need to compensate them. And in startups, compensation could be in cash, could be in deferred payment, it could be in equity. And equity, of course, is like the most popular one, which means that you compensate the people by taking ownership in your company, right? And sometimes this is a good model, especially if you have people who share the same vision like you and they want to continue this journey with you. But be careful not to give lots of equity in the beginning, because eventually you are giving away the ownership of your company. So you need to balance this. Job attractiveness also contribute to the time to hire. The more attractive is the kind of jobs you have, the less time you will take to hire people, right? You hear that many entrepreneurs, they have problems in hiring people, right? And it takes them a long time to get the right people, right? There could be other reasons, but one of the key reasons is whether the jobs you have is attractive enough or not, whether the team is focusing on attracting the right people or not, right? And it might be the kind of financial package you have in place, a combined of equity and cash, or just equity. It could be other like benefits. There are all sorts of things that you can think about, right? And of course, the time to hire contributes to hiring. And then you have the stock of the human resources. And the more people you have, the more employee experience that you accumulate over time, right? And the more employee experience you have, that contributes to your employee productivity. Okay? So this is how this sector of the people side of things, recruiting people, motivating people, getting work from the people, knowledge management somehow, how the experience accumulate and how is it important for your productivity, and the fact that actually experience is coming from the amount of people you retain in your company, right? So, and by the way, the gray one, this is a negative loop. So the less attractive your job, the more turnover you will have. So actually, it's not only not contributing to the job to the hiring, but even it's increasing your turnover because people not stay, right? And of course, this impact negatively the experience and impact negatively the productivity, right? So the key takeaway here is job attractiveness is a key thing in this sector. You want all the time to focus on making the kind of jobs you have as attractive as you can for your people. Make sense? In the back? Make sense? No?
Is there do you like look at the number of arrows that go into a particular area in order to see like what's the key and specific like the part of this?
Yeah. So I mean, mathematically, all of these are equations. So like job attractiveness, it's an equation of those two variables, and like the core team strengths is an equation of these things, and so forth. And the stock is mathematically, it's an integration equation over time, right? So okay.
Do you take the sum?
It varies. It varies on the how you want to calculate it, right?
So I think we briefly touched base on that, but if you look at the financial compensation and employee productivity, right? So you would expect correlation between that, to some extent. Right?
Yeah.
But if you consider a company that is at go-go stage, where the sales are happening very quickly, so you have a lot bigger sales force that may be working on commission base, for example. So for them, their goal is to sell maximum so that they can have more compensation.
Yeah.
So in that case, you will have very strong loop from financial to employee productivity.
And from sales to financials, right? Because the more sales you have, the more cash you have to compensate people, right?
Yeah, but we are also giving away some cash as
Yeah.
commission, which is increasing proportion to the sale. Right?
True. We will see this when we complete the whole thing. So we will see the relation between the sales and the financial compensation. So, as I said, this is not about the how, it's about the why, right? So this is very important. And this is actually the genesis of everything. This is the beginning, right? If you get this wrong, the whole thing wouldn't work properly, right? And then, while you are listening now, I'm sure that you will start asking yourselves, okay, so how we can develop such financial packages? You need to go and search on your own, or you might have another discussion. But now you see why is it important to work on this aspect or to develop yourself in this perspective, like how you can make jobs attractiveness. So you have all the material about motivating people, designing jobs, and so forth, right? Productivity, how to increase productivity, how to retain people. All of these are relevant topics, but the kind of approach I want you to take is more of a pulling approach rather than a pushing approach. I don't want to flood you with tons of information about all sorts of things. I have been involved with many of these kind of things, but it would be meaningless to push all of this information to you. I want you selectively to pull the kind of things that you want to complement your existing skills with by your own research, by asking relevant people very specific areas that I want to learn more about this specific area, right? Based on your needs.